So on the previous video, I showed how Onkgapile was talking about salvation, and that the version of glorification he shows is really not a biblical one, by saying that if sin is completely not removed, and it's like, whoa, Romans chapter number 7, it's completely opposite to that. But anyways, if you didn't see that video, it'll be down in the pinned comments. Now, since we've talked about the salvation, I wanted to hear his position on the church.
Now, this is the message you must hear from your pastors if they were true to God.
So, whichever church you are, this is the message they should be preaching if they were from God.
And you know, we are living in the last days. We are living in the closing history. And the Bible has informed us. So this is the only gospel that must be preached from the pulpits of Christianity. If your pastor is not preaching what we are about to read, you are not in the right church.
A problem is going to arise. So first, the version of salvation he presents, problematic. Now, he's going to tell all of us. So, this is a very big problem. This error that Onkgapile makes here, if you get into this error,
you are not in the right church or denomination.
That's the phrase there that I need you to keep in mind. So if what he's about to present here does not match with your church, you are in the wrong church.
Then I saw another angel flying in mid-air.
Let's stop there. John says he sees...
There is an angel. Okay.
What? An angel. But he says there's something about this angel. It is flying in the midst of what? The air. Question, Chris. So are you saying we are going to see an angel in the midst of the air flying here? No, we have learned from our previous studies that the Bible or the book of Revelation is symbolical and prophetic. Alright? Now the question that you should then ask at home is, what is this angel? If it is enough, Mark 16 verse 15 says, go ye into the nations and preach this gospel. That is why the angel you see in Revelation 14 verse 6 says he has got the everlasting gospel to preach. So the gospel was not given to angels, it was given to who? So when he speaks of an angel in an apocalyptic and eschatological literature, now eschatology speaks of end time. Apocalyptic speaks of revealing the hidden things. Are we together? An angel refers to one who's carrying a message as a human being for the appointed times.
So, an angel now, it just means someone who, if your church is not teaching this, you are in the wrong denomination. It's because Onkgapile is Seventh-day Adventist. So Onkgapile is about to describe the Adventist gospel as the only gospel that should be preached. And if you are not preaching this message, I don't know what business of mine do I have to preach Ellen White's message? Like, dude, what? I think that the Adventist church does better to get away from everything that speaks of Ellen. That woman is a heretic to begin with. And so for Onkgapile to come and say that anyone who preaches anything apart from this church that this woman started, that started on a false prophecy, is not preaching, we're not there on the false prophecy, is not preaching that. What are you saying?
I love my Bible, my man. So what John sees there, he says it is flying in the midst of what? The heavens. So he's not speaking about literal wings, okay? The posture and the positioning of these people is that of accessibility, of visibility.
So the wings just refer to access. Outside of the Adventist church, who do you know who interprets this verse like this?
We have Chris Network today. It is part of an angel. You are part of God's messengers to ensure there is a global reach. And
All right. So now you get it. Be careful preaching your church's message as their gospel.
aid this. I hope we are together. John sees a people who have got a certain message. Ganda, you may proceed, my brother. What does he then say? He says, I see an angel in the midst of the heavens. What does he then say after that?
And he had the eternal gospel to proclaim to those who live on the earth.
There's one church that obsesses with that word, the everlasting gospel. There's one church, Adventist. Onkgapile is Adventist. And so he's about to preach to us his denomination. I'm not Adventist, I'm not coming there. Not interested. If I go visit, I go visit. That's about it. When you come out, Pastor Lana, be very careful. When you come out of social media, what? Leave your church in your boots, in your house, in your study room. When you go out to the church, and what I'm saying here, it's not particularly to Onkgapile. I want it to be very clear. If you go and watch my video on the response of the church, the members of Pastor Anoisike, when the church purchase happened, their reactions, I mentioned this point. So it's not like I'm pinning it on him. These tendencies of when we go out, we preach our church. Be very careful of that. When you go out of your church, you represent the body of Messiah. Onkgapile is here. He should be preaching Christ and the Bible. That's about it. Not Ellen's gospel. Not Adventist gospel. We are not Adventists. We don't care for that. The moment you present all this everlasting gospel thing from Adventist perspective, it's a shut off. When you go out there, you're not a representation of your church. You're a representation of the gospel. The Catholic Church claims it is the mother of the church, and anyone outside of the Catholic Church is not saved. The Adventist Church claims the same.
Has informed us. So this is the only gospel that must be preached from the pulpits of Christianity. If your pastor is not preaching what we are about to read, you are not in the right church or denomination.
Which is what Onkgapile is doing. He's saying if we don't preach this particular message, we are somehow not born again. You gotta be. Stop doing this, guys. If you go to a church and they convince you when you are out there to be preaching your church, you are Christ members. Every single thing about you is just Christ members. When you get out of your church, you represent Christ.
About this gospel, it is not just any type of gospel, Chris. He says it is a what? Before, what is the one that
He's looking for the word everlasting. Like I've said, Adventists are the ones that obsess with that. He goes on to describe the gospel as it's described in the Bible. And I'm like, yeah, that's what we call it. By the way, the gospel is not defined in Revelation. The gospel is defined in Corinthians. 1 Corinthians chapter number 15. Brothers and sisters, I want you to remember of the gospel I have preached, which you have received and have taken a stand, by which you were saved, if you hold firmly to the word that I have preached unto you. Otherwise, you've believed in vain. What is it? For I have received and passed on to you that Christ died for our sin according to the scriptures, that he was buried, that he rose after the third day, as the scriptures say, and that he appeared to Caiaphas. And then it goes on. This is the gospel. So why is he complicating it? That's what Adventists do. They want a special word. So it's the everlasting gospel. So somehow it separates them from the church. Why do that? Why? Why is that so important? Bazalwane, if you are even an Adventist, be very careful of this trickery that your church teaches. It's trickery. Why are they causing you to separate yourself from the church? No, as we preach the everlasting. So what? We all preach Jesus died on the cross. What are you talking about? You know what? When I started going to Bible school, Adventists were the people that bothered me the most. If you go, you listen to my testimony on the sentence, you will hear I mention it. There was a group of guys that used to own a bookshop near my Bible school. And those guys would never let me rest just because of the Sabbath. Absolute pride. It's disgusting. I'm a Christian. It's not enough until you're doing it our way. Oh, shut up with that. Don't buy into that. We believe in Jesus who has died for us. 1 Corinthians says it. That's what we all preach. Now we must preach Revelation the way y'all preach it. No, by the way, that's the name. That's the title of their name. The three angels message. Yeah, if you want to obsess about the Revelation three angels message, do that. But now, we are not preaching that. We are not preaching the gospel. Yeah, stop, man. I'm repeating. For those that do not understand Adventist gospel, this is what they teach. So it's not about Owampile. So because someone might hear that part and say, Ricky has an issue with Owampile. No. What Owampile is saying is exactly what Adventists do. The reason why, personally, it absolutely pisses me off is because this thing really derailed me a lot. I wasted a lot of time dealing with people who kept hounding me about everlasting gospel. Yeah, shut up with that.
What are they having? An eternal what?
Eternal gospel.
Very important. He says, when you want to see that these are my people, okay, what they preach will be an everlasting gospel, not a trending gospel, Chris, not a...
Who preaches a trending gospel? What is even that? The gospel is Jesus died. But I hope you understand. Adventists teach like this.
Yeah, so I'm asking, if you say the law has been cancelled and it's only grace, how do we tell that this is right and this is wrong?
Do you see? It goes back to the law. Now, this subject matter of the law, I'll come back to it. It deserves a separate video. It's very essential to a kingdom citizen. And I'm not saying it about Owampile. If you've been in our discipleship class, the last session, as a matter of fact, the last 3 sessions of our discipleship, I preached about this. Okay, it's Matthew chapter number 9, verse number 37 and 38. It says, and then he said to his disciples, the harvest is plentiful. Listen, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. This is why I say, do not separate yourself. Don't think your church is so special to a point where you come out, you're now preaching your church. Be very careful doing that. Be very, very careful doing that. It says, the harvest is plentiful, but there are few workers. I know you see many churches, but the workers in the vineyard are few. Now, he says something. This thing that he's about to say will tell you whether a person is of the mindset of what Jesus wants us to be about. He says, ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into his harvest. This is not your church. The heart of a disciple sees the need for others outside of you, outside of your congregation, you and your friends. If a person lacks this, now, again, I need to be very specific. This is not saying Owampile or anybody. When people preach this particular teaching, that it's just about your church, be very careful. Because why? You have forgotten this. They are not serving. You see, the heart of a disciple is asking for other laborers. So I sit here and I I pray that there's other people who are going to do apologetics even better. I've been seeing some really great debaters nowadays, and that is exactly what you want. You want people not to just sit and allow the church to be spoken about anyhow. I saw Gift recently had one, and a very, very good debater. We need more people like that. We're not here to be promoting churches. We need more people with other gifts to be displayed out there. You can't think of a debater, you think Ricky. You think of apologists, you think Ricky. You think social media apologists, you think Ricky. There are people who are apologists in person. They'll come there. Luandiso does that. Nicholas does that. We need people like that in the field to be engaging with all these lies going around, flying around. You will see a disciple because they have a heart for others. The moment a person comes up to you and says, no, it's only our church, there's a problem. It's a problem. You pray that other workers are in the field. You can't tell me only your church. And Adventists have that. The very same thing that they keep talking about the Catholic Church, they are now doing the very same thing. The Catholic Church claims it's the mother of the church. Now you can hear, it's not him. The Adventists now say this, that they are the angel's message. The three angels message church. What are you talking about? Why? Because this is a lie that has been planted into many churches. It's a lie that's planted into many churches. And this thing will steal from you the joy of your prayers, the joy of praying for the body. Because you are praying for people in your church. We don't pray for people in your church. We pray for the body as a global unit. There is other believers outside of your church. Get with it. So when you say you might be in the wrong denomination, what do you mean? So God told you which one is something's wrong with you. Leave that. Do not ever get into that pocket. And I've just shown you why. The heart of a disciple will never be like that. The heart of a disciple knows his limits. How big is the Adventist church for it to claim it is the sole unit? Come on, y'all stop with that. Y'all sound silly with that. They could say that in the 1800s. Now you are still continuing with that same idea. Y'all stop. You sound funny. You sound weird. It's prideful, it's arrogance. And it does not have the heart of a servant who cares that there are others who should come into that fold. It's Ricky, we're done.